So we were playing a show in Hartlepool, and it was us headlining, and then there was a band called Dogs, who some people might remember, who were on in the middle, and then on first with this new little band called the Arctic Monkeys.
Hi, I'm Nick from Enemy, and we're here with Blaine from Mystery Jets for the latest in Enemies in Conversation series. How's it going, Blaine?
Not too bad. Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you.
I mean, in an ideal world, we'd kind of be sitting here about talking about your plans for what would be the shows at the Clapham Grand this coming weekend, the social distance gigs that we're supposed to play. But we're now speaking when London is set to go into Tier 3 tomorrow, but beginning of Wednesday, and those gigs are now kind of no longer going to happen. I mean, you'll have to wait a little bit longer for that chance to finally play. How much of a blow is that to you guys?
It's just another blow in the shit show that has been 2020, really.
Yeah.
It's another twist in the road. I think with all of these things, what so many of us have had to do this year is just always put it in context. You know, like there's all disappointments that we've experienced on a personal level as artists, as people, but in the grander scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. You know, I mean, obviously we were really excited about these shows at Clapham because they were going to be the only gigs this year for the band. So we were really excited for them, and we'd started rehearsing last week, so we were getting a full kind of hour and a half show together. But it wasn't to be, and you know, I think obviously the most important thing is that our hospitals aren't overwhelmed, and I think it probably is the right thing for London to sort of shut down, I suppose. I mean, it isn't a full lockdown, is it? I mean, they're quite happy people going out spending money in shops, but apparently theatres and gigs aren't considered essential. So there you go. That's Tory government.
I mean, I guess there is still kind of hope, because I mean, I'm guessing you're going to reschedule the show when the next kind of possible opportunity. What's the latest? Have you spoken to Ali? What's he said?
Yeah, Ali Wolf, the promoter at the venue, is fantastic, and we're working with him at the moment on a new date, or 2 new dates, but it will still happen, but it will be in the early part of next year. So we're just trying to lock that down.
But I mean, largely, I mean, just speaking to you now, when we spoke earlier this year, you've always seemed so positive in the sense of just for the future of live music and the hope that it will eventually come back round. Where do you kind of get that positivity from? Why do you kind of keep thinking, you know what, we'll eventually get to that place one day where we'll be able to play?
I suppose I don't know what pessimism achieves, really. I don't know what there is to gain from being pessimistic. I mean, I think we all have to hold on to some notion of hope wherever we can find it. And I think the same applies to artists. I think if we sort of see this as just staring down a long black tunnel, then you could quite easily convince yourself to say, well, what's the point? But I think you've got to find a point, and the way that we've been doing that, I suppose, is just trying to make stuff happen, whether it's been a live stream, whether it's been a show, a socially distant show, and try and find little sort of glimmers of hope amongst this sort of dark year. But God, I'm so glad it's almost over. I mean, what is it? There's 2.5, 3 weeks left of 2020. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day, and they were saying that if you look back over the millennium, there's been over the past 100 years, the 20s have often, for some reason, obviously in the 1920s, it was the Wall Street crash, it was the Great Depression, but going back hundreds of years, for some reason, the 20s have sort of have arrived with this cloud of doom, but which has then kind of translated into prosperity after that. And obviously that's something to look forward to. But at the same time, I do think, great art comes out of miserable times in history. And I think the 70s was a bit like that in this country. I mean, when you look back, you had obviously you had the strikes, and you had austerity in the 70s, and you had the 4-day week, or whatever it was, 3-day week.
Yeah.
And, post-punk came out of that, and then new wave came out of that, and prior to that, punk came out of it. And I think escapism is often where the best music comes from. So I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling that we are going into a new era, or like cosmic order, whatever you want to call it. And I'm feeling like creative. I'm feeling inspired. So I'm just going to try and channel like my experiences into some new music, I think.
And in terms of that, like kind of new music, you've got still kind of like writing, because I know you had Billion Heartbeats back in April, and then you've kind of released protest songs, the cover album that came out last week. Is this kind of a continual process where you've just been like writing and writing throughout lockdown?
Well, as you said, Billion Heartbeats came out in April. It was physically released in July, I think, or June, because there was a backlog with all the vinyl being made, with all the factories closing for lockdown. But the Home Protest record, which we put out, which was a collection of cover songs of some of our favourite protest songs, was actually recorded this time last year. So it was recorded in kind of October to December, which is when I was actually recovering from my operation, which I had at the end of last year. So we actually we started releasing the videos of those tracks during lockdown. And I think a lot of people thought, this is your lockdown record. But actually, I was locked down for like the second half of last year, just like recovering from an operation. So that's actually when we recorded those songs. But yeah, I suppose like as the year was sort of drawing to an end, we thought, well, we've got those recordings, and it would make a nice record. It would make a nice album, and kind of an album quite unlike anything we've done before, because we always, we've self-produced our last 2 records, and as any artist will know, when you self-produce your own music, you just keep on working into it and working into it and working into it to the point of sort of obsession. And with this record, with Home Protest, it was a chance to put out something that was the complete opposite. It was just live recordings of us covering, like I said, other people's songs. And it sort of captured a moment. And I think I felt that it represented a different side of the band, a much more kind of raw view on how we make music together. And yeah, it just felt like an interesting document and a positive note to end the year on, which I think we all needed.
And it's like, obviously you kind of never wrote A Billion Heartbeats knowing, like, you know what, we're going to release this in the middle of a pandemic. But obviously it did arrive then. And it almost seems like prophetic in the sense that a lot of the stuff, I mean, like, songs that tackle the role of the NHS have never been more timely. And like, it is just perhaps your most timely record in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, a few people have said that. And I think it's a coincidence. I mean, the thing about art, or making music, or whatever you want to call it, is that you can never really predict what kind of a world it's going to land in, because modern life moves at such a pace that when you're working on a record, by the time it's been mixed, mastered, it's been ready to go out onto shelves or out into the world, life moves so quickly that you can never really predict what kind of a world it's going to go into. And I think with A Billion Heartbeats, the climate, certainly living in this country at the time that we were making the record, was very different to 2020, if you know what I mean. 2020 has been different to, speak to like our parents' generation. They've never experienced anything like this. It's just completely, an alien existence to everybody. So if the record chimes with people, I feel great about that. But obviously it was completely unplanned. But I suppose they are songs about standing up for something and about connectivity and about community. As you know, they were inspired by protests and coming together for all different causes. And I think that's been the one thing that I think the one sort of grain of positivity this year is the way that people have come together and stood up for things like the NHS, for our key workers. So, you know, I feel good that it has sort of chimed with that.
But it's funny as well, because like in that title track, when I was listening to A Billion Heartbeats, I mean, there's that opening lyric of why does it take a tragedy to make our true colours come out? And that in particular really stood out for me, in the sense that, like, you know what, like we all stood on our balconies and like at our doorsteps and like clapped and all the rest of it. But it's almost like, why is it to this point that now we're all coming together? Why wasn't it before that we kind of realised challenges that, I don't know, like, why is it that a pandemic has kind of finally made us all be like, you know what, we've got to protect the NHS? Like, we're banging the drum before, don't get me wrong, but perhaps not on the level that the pandemic has made us do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think with so many things, it's not until there's the threat of it being taken away from you that you really recognise the importance of it in your life. And I think that applies to the NHS more than anything. I mean, the context that that song was written in, Hospital Radio, was during the conversations around trade deals with the UK and America, and about the privatisation, the Americanisation of the health service. And I was in hospital when I wrote that song, and it was during Trump's visit to the UK, when there was a press conference, and he was asked the question, would the NHS be on the table as part of future post-Brexit trade deals between the UK and America? And he said, yeah, of course, everything would be on the table. And that was when I just thought, we need to stand up and we need to fight for this. I mean, there's NHS marches every year, but that year happened to be the 70th anniversary of the NHS. And, you know, it's something that is so close to this, to the hearts of everyone living in this country. You know, it's been called our religion. It's been called like our national religion, because we were all born in it. And it, you know, right from our entrance into this world to the point that we leave this world, the NHS is there. And it's actually, like I said, it's when it's being threatened to be taken away from us that we do all stand up and we recognise the importance of fighting for it. You know, the way that people have come together to support frontline carers this year, it's been incredible. And I think we all know how important they are, but we don't necessarily, we're all so busy in our own lives that we don't necessarily always recognise the need or the importance to champion and support them until we really need to, and we've really needed to this year.
And like, yeah, I know you've kind of been following up. You had your Things Worth Fighting For podcast and the themes there. Do you think it's kind of like, one, to release that record? Do you almost feel like we have to kind of continue it and, like, you know, make kind of further awareness of the kind of messages that we want to spread with this record then? Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, I suppose like everyone at the beginning of the year, I suddenly realised, okay, I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands than I thought I would, because there's no shows and we lost all our summer festivals. Yeah. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? We all felt that in the band. And I sort of thought, well, I listened to a lot of podcasts, you know, I listened to a lot of radio, and I'd never really sort of considered the idea of making one, but I thought, well, why not? Why don't we take the themes that inspired these, all the songs in this album, and it was everything from the NHS to Grenfell, to Refugees Welcome Here, Choose Love, all sorts of themes, you know, gender equality, identity politics, all these sorts of things. I thought, well, why don't we make a podcast series where, instead of us having the mic, let's pass the mic to other people who actually are activists or are advocates or campaigners in these fields, and let's let them tell their stories. And I think it's just been an incredible, like, fascinating experience for me, just like meeting people whose experience is completely outside the realm of my experience, and like allowing them to tell their stories.
Like, to that end, in terms of meeting people, admittedly not a podcast guest, but you met Greta Thunberg, didn't you?
I did meet Greta, yeah.
What was she like? I mean, this was in Stockholm during her school kind of boycott, where she inspired other kids around the world. What was it like?
I met her on her 17th birthday.
Yeah.
Which is mad. I just happened to be staying in Stockholm for New Year's last year, and my girlfriend and I were walking through the town, and I happened to look on my phone, and I saw that Greta's birthday was trending on Twitter, and it said, yeah, Greta's 17 today, and she just met David Attenborough, and he passed her over some kind of like symbolic key. You know, it was like the key to the future of the human race or something like. He was basically like passing the baton, saying like, it's your job now. And I thought that was incredible. And I was like, I wonder where would Greta be on her 17th birthday? I mean, we're in Stockholm, and I called up a Swedish friend of mine, and he said, oh, she's going to be doing her school strike. And I said, really, on her birthday? And he was like, yeah, of course, it's Greta Thunberg. Like, where would Greta want to be on her birthday more than protesting outside the Swedish parliament? So I said, right, I'm going to go down and see if I can meet her. And sure enough, I went down to the little kind of public square where the House of Parliament, Swedish House of Parliament are, and there she was. And there was only about 5 or 6 people with her who were her friends. They were obviously school friends who were part of the Fridays for Future. I went up and I shook her hand, and I just said, thank you. And I just said, yeah, that was it. And I just said, happy birthday, and thank you for teaching us, and for like opening the window onto the world that we all want to live in. And I think it's so incredible that it's this younger generation coming through that are lighting the way forward. She is right at the forefront of that, and it was incredible. Yeah, it was. I was sort of speechless really meeting her. She does have this incredible. She's got these amazing piercing eyes. She's got this incredible aura around her, and she was very sweet, very polite, very calm, and
yeah, it's like that thing with Greta where like you kind of look at the people that she's annoying, and you kind of realize that she's pissing off all the right people. So like it's kind of, yeah, she must be doing something right. Also, she's got amazing Twitter game where like after Trump lost, and there was that tweet where he said something about her, and he was like, Greta must calm down and go watch a classic movie with a friend. So she just like turned it around straight on him. It was like, Donald must calm down and like go watch a movie with a friend. Like how you can be like that kind of smart, savvy, and like committed as like an 18-year-old. It's just unreal.
It is. I mean, and also, you know, she's 17. Like when you're that age, you're meant to piss off older people. That's the whole point.
Of course it is. But that aside, I mean, looking forward to 2021, it's going to mark 15 years since Making Dens came out. Does it feel like 15 years to you?
It does, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I think when you're a musician, when you're making records, it's not that often you kind of look back over your shoulder. I mean, a couple of years ago when we did Retrospective, which was, I don't know if you came to that, but it was when we did. Yeah. Oh, you did? Amazing. Well, we did our first 5 records back to back. And that was sort of the first time that we'd sort of allowed ourselves a glimpse over our shoulders to kind of look back at our journey so far, and more than anything as a way of trying to visualize where we needed to go next.
Yeah.
And but most of the time we're so kind of engrossed and focused on what we're doing right now that we don't really look back too much. But that's kind of crazy. 15 years is quite a long time. But then we started really young. You know, when we started the band, Will and I were 8 years old.
Wow.
You know, when we called ourselves Mystery Jets with Henry. So it's been a lifelong journey. I mean, I've been in the band for 2/3 of my life. So.
And what's this? I was roughly reading, but something along the lines of, and correct me if I've got this wrong, you originally called Misery Jets, and I think you got the spelling wrong or something. What was in that?
There's various stories about that, but the one that rings true to me is we when we first started the band, Henry bought us a drum kit. There used to be a paper called Loot, which was kind of like Gumtree before the internet. And you used to get Loot and you go through it, and it was like free ads. And he found this old battered up old drum kit, and so he brought it out to where I was living at the time in France, and Will and I got it, and we were like, okay, when you start a band, what you have to do is you have to have the name of the band on the bass drum. Like, obviously, that's what the Beatles did. That's what we've got to do. And so rather than paint it, for some reason, I had like I don't know what it was called. It was like a real 90s like novelty gadget where it was like a strip of tape and you fed it into this thing and you turned it and you clicked it and it kind of punched the letters onto the tape.
I know the ones you mean. Yeah. Like almost like a little plastic strip and like bosses the letters. I know exactly the one you mean. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know what that thing's called, but I had one of those, and so I was like, okay, rather than just paint it onto the drum, I'm going to print it on this thing, and I printed it out. But I'm dyslexic, and I still can't spell, and I wrote misery so I wrote misery, but I forgot the T, so it was kind of misery with a Y, but there was no T, and I put it on, and no, that's not right. We were called the Misery Jets, but I wrote misery with a Y, and Henry looked at it and he said, we should be the Mystery Jets. That's even better. I mean,
just one. So like looking back on making Dens, 2006, you were on the Enemy Awards tour with Maximo Park. I know there was another one. I can't remember, but most importantly, the Monkeys were there. Did you like get a chance to hang around with like Alex and the rest of them?
Yeah. I mean, we've done quite a few tours with the Arctic Monkeys. We did, that was the first time we met. Actually, the first time we met them was a show that we played up in a place called Hartlepool, in the, oh God, this is my geography gets really bad. I want to say it's kind of the Midlands.
It's more like North Yorkshire, I think it is.
North Yorkshire.
Up north. Yeah.
Thank you. So we were playing a show in Hartlepool, and it was us headlining, and then there was a band called Dogs, who some people might remember, who were on in the middle, and then on first with this new little band called the Arctic Monkeys. And I think they might have just had a little write-up in the NME. They might have had like a radar piece or something like that.
Yeah.
And they showed up, and we were all, we had heard about them, but I don't think the audience had. And we were like, we love your songs. I think we'd heard Fake Tales of San Francisco, something like that. And there was about 6 people watching them, and it was us and a couple of people who had obviously read the same article as us, and we were watching them, and it just blew my mind. And then the NME Radar Tour happened later that year. This would have been 2005, I believe.
Yeah.
And we played a slot before them at Reading that year in like the Baby Tent. And we had a great show, to be fair. Like I think we were about to release Making Dens, or had just released Making Dens. But then they came on, and it was insane. And we were watching from the side of stage, and we were like, you guys were like, you supported us like 4 months ago, and you were first on, and no one knew. And there was like 20,000 people trying to fit into a tent, probably fitted about 700 or 800 people. And it was just nuts. And then obviously we went on and we did the Radar Tour together. And then we did several tours together after that. We toured with them for their first album in Europe. And then we did the Humbug tour as well, which was in Europe. So yeah, we've stayed friends over the years, and they're lovely guys. I bump into Jamie a lot in London, but actually I was listening to their live record that they've just put out yesterday.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's amazing. It's so good, and I think they're so close to our hearts. And I just think that they've always carried on evolving. And whenever a new Monkeys record comes out, I listen with huge interest and admiration. So.
As someone who's kind of like toured with them and seen them from the start, it must have been like strange or like amazing to see this transformation of Alex kind of like in this like Adidas hoodie right up the way to this kind of like Americana crooner, like slick backed hair that he was, all the way to AM, and then just seeing like those changes through those periods as well.
I think he was always that guy. I just think he was wearing different clothes.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. And just finally, what are your kind of plans for 2021? I mean, if gigs come on the horizon, obviously I'm guessing you're going to be back out there, but like what are you kind of hoping to achieve next year?
Well, we've got quite a few shows that have been rescheduled. So our tour, which would have been in April this year, is now April next year. So obviously, fingers crossed that's still going to happen. It may have to be moved back again. We don't know. It's just so hard to tell at the moment. I think, if there is a January lockdown, that's going that's going to make things really, really difficult for a lot of people. But let's just see. That's all we can, do is just hope.
Right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Blaine, and all the best, and have a great Christmas.
And you too.
Cheers, mate. Have a good one.